How did the Spaniards manage to cause the deaths of 8 million people in just over 40 years? It's a number so large it's hard to even comprehend. We often hear about the guns, the steel, and the horses, but that's not the full story. The most devastating weapon wasn't something you could see or hold. It was invisible, silent, and it arrived with the very first ships. This is the story of the Great Dying, an apocalypse that unfolded in the Americas, and it's a story that has been tragically misunderstood. Last time, we talked about the initial contact and the mindset of the conquistadors. Today, we're diving deeper into the grim reality of how the indigenous populations of the Americas were decimated. The period between 1492 and 1535 was one of the most catastrophic times in human history. To understand how it happened, we have to look beyond the battlefield. The primary killers weren't swords or cannons. They were pathogens. Diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza, which were common in Europe, were completely unknown in the Americas. The people here had no immunity, no biological defense against these new invaders. Imagine a virus sweeping through a population where no one has ever been exposed to it before. The results were catastrophic. Smallpox was the first and deadliest. When it hit the Aztec capital Tenochtitlan, it wiped out nearly half the population in a matter of months. It spread like wildfire, often moving faster than the Spaniards themselves. Entire villages were wiped out before a single European ever set foot in them. The accounts from the time are horrifying. People covered in pustules, unable to move, dying of thirst and starvation in their own homes. The social fabric of these complex societies completely unraveled. There weren't enough healthy people left to care for the sick, bury the dead, or even farm the land. Famine followed disease, creating a vicious cycle of death. But it wasn't just disease. The brutality of the Spanish conquest played a massive role. The search for gold and silver was relentless. The Spanish implemented systems of forced labor, like the encomienda system, which was essentially a form of slavery. Indigenous people were forced to work in brutal conditions in mines and on plantations. They were overworked, underfed, and treated with unimaginable cruelty. Any resistance was met with overwhelming violence. Massacres were common. The Spanish military tactics, combining cavalry, steel weapons, and firearms against people who had never seen such things, were devastatingly effective. But the psychological impact was just as profound. The destruction of their temples, the overthrow of their leaders, and the relentless pressure to abandon their beliefs created a sense of despair and hopelessness. This spiritual and cultural devastation broke the will of many communities to survive. So when we look at that staggering number 8 million people, it wasn't just one thing. It was a perfect storm of disease, warfare, and enslavement. The invisible plague of smallpox cleared the way, weakening empires and clearing vast territories. Then came the direct violence and exploitation, which finished the job. The lack of morals wasn't just about individual cruelty. It was systemic. The entire colonial project was built on the idea that the indigenous people were less than human, their lives and lands ripe for the taking. This dehumanization is what allowed the conquistadors to commit such atrocities without remorse. They saw the Americas not as a land of people and cultures, but as a source of wealth to be extracted at any cost. It's a dark chapter in history, but one we must understand. The world we live in today was shaped by these events. The wealth that flowed from the Americas to Europe funded empires and fueled the rise of the modern global economy. But that wealth was built on a foundation of immense suffering. The story isn't just about the conquerors. It's about the resilience of the survivors. Despite the apocalypse they faced, indigenous cultures did not disappear. They adapted, resisted, and survived. Their descendants are still here today, fighting to preserve their languages, traditions, and heritage. Understanding this history is not about assigning blame in the present. It's about acknowledging the truth of the past and recognizing its long shadow. The legacies of colonialism are still with us in the social and economic inequalities that persist throughout the Americas. By confronting this difficult history, we can better understand the world we've inherited and work towards a more just and equitable future. The story of the Americas is not just one of conquest, but also one of incredible resilience and survival against impossible odds. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please give it a like and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.